time being, it's impossible for me to take my family back to the UK safely. Well, for a start, the only time that I've come back to the UK is...
Prince Harry arrived at Kensington expecting ceremony, tension, perhaps even coldness, but not erasure. The blow did not come through shouting, headlines, or a public statement. It came from a record book, a quiet room, and a missing name where his place had always been. In that single discovery, the old wounds of the royal family reopened with devastating force. Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. Harry stepped back into Kensington Palace, carrying the guarded calm that only comes from years of walking into rooms where every face already has an opinion. This royal review was supposed to be private, controlled, and technical. A royal review meant a closed examination of household records, ceremonial lists, and family recognition files. The paperwork that decides where a person stands inside palace life, even when no one says it out loud. That mattered because those records did not just track names. They shaped access, memory, rank, and belonging. The aide opened the register carefully, too carefully. Harry watched the page turn, then another, until the place where his name had always belonged appeared with a brutal emptiness. His face changed before he spoke. The confidence hardened, then cracked. He leaned closer, searching for the familiar line, the proof that Kensington still held some part of him in its official memory. But the royal record, the formal palace file that connects family identity with household recognition, no longer carried him where it once had. Harry did not raise his voice. That made the silence worse. The aide kept one hand on the edge of the register and refused to meet his eyes. In that small refusal, Harry understood the truth. This was not a clerical mistake. This was not a misplaced page. This was a decision dressed in paper and sealed behind palace discipline. The name had not faded. It had been removed. A sealed amendment note sat where certainty used to be. Harry saw the date. He saw the palace mark. He saw the instruction attached to the file, stating that no correction could be made without approval from the highest level of the household. The phrase hit harder than accusation, because it meant someone powerful had not only allowed this, someone had protected it. Harry finally looked up and asked the only question that mattered. Who authorized this? The aide said nothing, yet the answer seemed to press against the walls around them, unspoken. Before Harry could demand the truth, the missing name forced every person connected to him to face what they stood to lose. This was never only about a name on paper. For Harry, it was identity. For William, it was duty. For Charles, it was the weight of kingship pressing against fatherhood. And for Meghan, watching from a distance, it was proof that the palace could still reach into private life and turn a family fracture into something permanent. Harry left the record room with his hand tight around his phone, walking like a man trying not to let the walls see him bleed. Kensington had never been just another palace to him. It held childhood echoes, family grief, and the shadow of Diana in every memory he carried. That was why the missing name hurt so deeply. A royal record meant more than an old register. It was an official family file used to mark recognition, status, and ceremonial belonging inside palace life. For Harry, seeing himself removed from that file felt like being pushed out of his own past. Meghan answered before the second ring finished. Harry tried to speak with control, but his voice betrayed him when he said, "My name is gone." She went silent, then asked him to repeat it, as if hearing the words again might make them less cruel. Meghan understood the danger faster than he wanted to admit. If the removal reached beyond paper, it could touch invitations, precedents, ceremonial references, and access to places once tied to his birth. That was why she did not comfort him with soft promises. She warned him that the palace rarely made a move like this without preparing the next one. William already knew something had shifted, but not enough to stop it. Earlier, the prince had been briefed about a classification change, a cold phrase that made the decision sound harmless. A classification change meant the palace was moving someone from one official category to another, changing how that person was recognized in records and ceremonies. William had understood the importance of order. He had not been told Harry would discover the change alone, face to face with the empty space where his name once stood. Charles received the notice in a private file, and the king did not speak for several moments. He read Harry's reaction once, then again, his fingers resting on the page as if paper could still carry the warmth of a sun. Charles knew discipline was expected of him. He also knew fatherhood did not disappear because the crown demanded silence. That was the cruelty of the moment. The monarch had to protect the institution, while the father could still imagine Harry's face when the truth landed. Harry ended the call with Meghan colder than before, not because she had hardened him, but because she had named what he feared. William was then told to meet him privately before the matter reached Charles. The brothers were about to face each other, but the real cause of the decision had already been set in motion weeks before. Every royal crisis has a moment that looks small, until history turns back and points to it. For this one, it was not a scandalous interview or a public accusation. It was a ceremony inside Kensington, quiet on the surface, perfectly arranged, and deadly in what it revealed. After that day, the palace stopped seeing Harry as distant. It began seeing him as disruptive. Harry arrived at the private Kensington remembrance ceremony believing, perhaps foolishly, that grief could still create a neutral ground. The ceremony was held for Diana, and it was meant to be solemn, private, and healing, with no cameras, no public statement, and no official audience waiting outside. A remembrance ceremony meant a quiet family gathering created to honor someone who had died, and this one mattered because Diana was not only a royal figure, she was Harry's mother, William's mother, and the wound Charles had never fully escaped. William stood close enough to feel the tension change before anyone named it. The prince had been told the order of tribute had been adjusted to reflect current royal duties, and that phrase sounded reasonable, until Harry saw where he had been placed. Working royals meant family members still carrying out official duties for the crown, and the revised ceremonial hierarchy meant the new order of who stood where, spoke when, and appeared first during private royal moments. Harry understood the message instantly. His love for Diana was being placed behind his usefulness to the institution. Charles looked down when Harry quietly objected. The king did not stop him, but he did not defend him either. That silence struck Harry harder than any argument could have done. He felt the room turn colder as the tribute moved forward, and he saw William stiffen beside him, torn between brotherhood and duty. Harry had come to honor his mother. Instead, he felt his grief being measured, ranked, and corrected by palace rules. The document appeared after the ceremony ended. A senior courtier presented the Kensington Remembrance Protocol, a written agreement requiring everyone present to accept the palace's revised order for family ceremonies and future household recognition. Harry read it once, then set the pen down. He refused to sign. The refusal did not explode in the room. It landed quietly, but everyone understood its power. The courtier later recorded Harry's decision in a documented account prepared for the private office, marking it as non-compliance with household recognition standards. That phrase was cold, small, and devastating. Charles received it. William was briefed on it. Harry did not know that his refusal had been turned into evidence. That was the trigger. One unsigned protocol became the seed of the missing name. By the time Harry reached Kensington again, the decision had already moved from hurt feelings into machinery, and machinery does not apologize. When Harry and William finally faced each other, there were no cameras, no courtiers speaking for them, and no polished palace language to soften the blow. Just two brothers in a private room at Kensington, standing on opposite sides of a table, with the missing name between them like a blade neither one could put down. Harry entered first, carrying a copy of the amended record folded once in his hand. William was already waiting, calm on the surface, but the prince's stillness had a warning inside it. This meeting mattered, because it came before Charles was drawn directly into the storm, and once the king entered, the fight would no longer belong only to two brothers. A private sitting room meant a closed family space used for sensitive conversations, away from staff and ceremony, yet nothing about this felt private enough to protect them. William had been told to calm the situation before it became a royal crisis. Harry knew that. He also knew the future king had lived close enough to palace decisions to recognize danger before it became official. That was why he did not begin gently. He placed the amended record on the table and asked whether brotherhood now required permission from the palace. The words landed hard. William looked at the paper, then at Harry, and for a moment neither brother moved. Harry pushed further, because pain had already sharpened into accusation. He said his name had not been misplaced, it had been removed. William kept his voice low, but his jaw tightened when Harry accused him of protecting the institution over blood. The institution meant the working system of monarchy. The offices, rules, advisors, records, and traditions built to keep the crown stable no matter who gets hurt inside the family. That mattered because William had been trained to protect it, while Harry had spent years feeling crushed by it. William finally revealed the truth through a recorded private conversation, later summarized for Charles's office. He said the change had never been described to him as erasure. It had been presented as a classification correction after Harry refused the Kensington Remembrance Protocol. A classification correction meant moving a person's status in official files, making the decision sound technical instead of personal. William insisted he had not known Harry would discover it alone in that room. Harry heard the explanation, but it did not soften him. It made the betrayal clearer. The ceremony for Diana had become evidence. His refusal to sign had become a mark against him. His grief had been turned into a palace file. William stepped closer and said the final authority did not come from him. Harry looked at his brother and understood where the confrontation had to go next. The argument between brothers cracked the surface, but the true power behind the missing name waited in a quieter room, holding the pen that had made it real. The most powerful decisions in monarchy rarely arrive with thunder. They arrive with initials in the margin, a seal pressed into paper, and a king sitting alone after everyone else has left. Harry's removal was not shouted across a palace corridor. It was authorized in stillness, and that stillness made it more devastating. Charles received the amended royal record after the confrontation between his sons had already begun to spread through private channels. The king knew what the file meant before he touched it, and that knowledge weighed on him. The private office was the small inner system that handled sensitive royal approvals, including recognition, access, and household status. That mattered because once a decision passed through that office, it stopped being family pain and became palace policy. Charles opened the file and read the summary prepared from the documented account of Harry's refusal at the remembrance ceremony. He saw the words, "non-compliance with household recognition standards," and for a moment, the king did not move. Household recognition meant the palace's formal way of deciding how a royal family member is named, placed, and included in internal records. For Charles, the phrase was useful to the crown and cruel to the father. It made heartbreak sound manageable. The monarch removed his glasses and set them beside the page. He looked at Harry's name, then at the amendment waiting for approval. The amended royal record was not just a corrected list. It was the updated version of the palace file that would decide whether Harry remained active in Kensington's formal recognition system. Charles understood why advisors framed the removal as protection. They feared disputed ceremonial claims, awkward seating conflicts, and public confusion at future royal events. Stability, they told him, required clean lines. Charles hesitated. In that pause, the king saw the boy who once ran through Kensington corridors before grief reshaped him. He saw Diana's son before he saw the man who had refused palace order. Yet the crown demanded a different kind of memory. It asked him to look past childhood, past fatherhood, past guilt, and sign for the future of the institution. Charles picked up the pen, and the silence around him became unbearable. The sealed instruction made the decision sharper. Harry's name could remain in family archives, the private historical files that preserve personal and bloodline records, but it would not remain in the active royal record at Kensington. That difference mattered because the archive remembered him, while the active record recognized him. Charles signed. The pen moved once, and a son's place changed. When Harry learned that his father had approved the order, the wound shifted from institutional betrayal to something more intimate. The signature had done its work, but paper could not contain the damage once Harry understood that his father had chosen the crown's language over his son's place. At first, the removal seemed like a line in a record. Then the doors began to answer for it. A pass that no longer opened. A staff member who no longer stepped aside. A corridor Harry knew from childhood suddenly became unfamiliar ground. The palace had not only changed his status, it had changed the way space itself responded to him. Harry walked toward the Kensington corridor that had once connected him to private family rooms, expecting resistance from people, not from the system itself. The old route mattered because it carried the memory of belonging, of childhood movement, through spaces where he did not need permission to exist. Staff now followed revised access instructions tied to the amended royal record, the updated palace file that changed how Harry was recognized inside Kensington. Access instructions meant the rules given to guards and aides about who may enter certain rooms, attend certain moments, or pass beyond protected doors. A security officer stepped forward gently, but the softness did not hide the order behind it. Harry stopped. The officer said his clearance had changed, and Harry's face hardened as he understood what that meant. This was no longer about a name sitting in silence on a page. It was active now. It had hands, voices, keys, and barriers. The officer was not insulting him. That almost made it worse. He was obeying a command that had already accepted Harry's exclusion as normal. Harry asked whether he was being treated as a visitor. The officer lowered his eyes and did not answer. That silence carried the whole truth. A visitor could be welcomed, guided, thanked, and dismissed. A son should not need clearance to move through the corridors of his own history. Harry looked past the officer toward the passage ahead, and the space felt suddenly distant, as if Kensington had learned to forget him faster than any person could. A second aide arrived with a quieter blow. Ceremonial access, private seating, and archive privileges were all being reviewed under the same amendment. Ceremonial access meant the right to attend or be placed within formal royal events. Archive privileges meant permission to view family records kept behind palace control. Harry understood the pattern. The record had become a key, and once his name was removed, other locks began to turn. Meghan received the update in a tense call, and she understood the danger immediately. This was not one restriction. This was a new royal boundary around their entire family. Meghan told Harry that the palace was teaching everyone how to treat him before anyone had the courage to say it publicly. Harry listened, then grew still. Harry refused to leave Kensington quietly. He asked for one final meeting with Charles, without courtiers, lawyers, or palace language. The palace had begun closing doors, but one door remained, the one between a father and a son who could no longer hide behind titles. When Harry entered the private room, Charles was not surrounded by red boxes, advisors, or ceremonial language. He was simply waiting. For the first time since the name disappeared, the monarchy stepped back and left a father facing the son he had wounded. The silence between them was not empty. It was packed with every year they had failed to say enough. Harry closed the door behind him, and the sound seemed to remove the palace from the conversation. Charles looked older in that moment. Not weaker, but stripped of the distance that usually protected him. No aides stood nearby. No official transcript was taken. An official transcript meant a written record kept by staff so the institution could control exactly what had been said. Its absence mattered, because this meeting could no longer hide behind procedure. It had to survive on truth alone. Charles asked Harry to sit, but Harry remained standing. The king did not command him. He simply waited, and that restraint made the room heavier. Harry said losing access hurt, but seeing his name removed felt like being erased from his own childhood. He told Charles that Kensington had held his memories before it held his status. He had not just lost a line in a record, he had lost proof that the palace still knew where he came from. Charles lowered his gaze, and for once, the monarch did not answer like a ruler. He admitted he signed the order because he feared future conflict. Future conflict meant the palace's fear that Harry's position could create disputes over ceremonies, seating, public recognition, and royal access in years to come. Charles said he had wanted to prevent another storm before it began, then paused before adding that fear was not the same as wisdom. The words did not excuse him. They exposed him. Harry heard the admission and did not soften immediately. He asked whether a father could sign away a son's place and still call it protection. Charles flinched at that, because the question reached past the crown and found the man beneath it. The king revealed that the active record could not be restored at once, without weakening the authority of the office. The office meant the private royal system that approves internal decisions, and Charles knew reversing it instantly would make every future ruling look unstable. Charles offered what power still allowed. He would issue a private addendum, a written note attached to the archive, stating that Harry remained recognized as Diana's son, Charles's son, and William's brother, regardless of active ceremonial status. Harry accepted it without triumph. It was not restoration. It was not justice. But it was the first honest sentence the palace had written about him in years. Harry left with the addendum promised, not as victory, but as evidence that truth had finally entered the room. That private sentence did not undo the removal, but once the world learned what had happened, the monarchy had to answer to more than its own records. By morning, the secret had escaped Kensington. What began as a private record became a national symbol, and Britain woke to a royal family once again split across breakfast tables, front pages, and palace gates. The missing name was no longer hidden inside a file. It had become an image powerful enough for the public to understand instantly. Meghan watched the coverage from home, and every sentence seemed to turn Harry into something smaller than a person. Commentators spoke about his place, his status, his classification, as though her husband were an entry that could be moved without leaving a wound behind. Palace correspondents had obtained confirmation of the amended Kensington royal record, the updated internal file that now showed Harry removed from active household recognition. That mattered, because the record no longer lived quietly inside palace walls. It had become proof that a private family fracture had been turned into public royal order. William saw the headlines before the second briefing reached him. The prince understood instantly that control had slipped away. The palace had released a short statement calling the change an internal classification matter, which meant a private administrative decision about how someone was listed, ranked, or recognized inside royal systems. But the wording failed because people did not hear administration, they heard rejection. William knew the institution had tried to sound calm, yet the public had translated the message into one brutal sentence. Harry had been removed. The front page made the crisis impossible to soften. A London newspaper printed a stark white register page with one empty line beneath the headline, "The Prince They Removed." The image carried more force than any speech. It gave the public a symbol, and symbols are dangerous because they do not ask permission before entering memory. Meghan stared at it for several seconds, then looked away. Harry's absence had become a picture everyone could understand. A crowd gathered outside Kensington Palace as the story spread. Some held signs supporting Harry, insisting that blood could not be edited out of history. Others argued the monarchy had to protect itself from confusion, conflict, and endless public drama. Kensington Palace mattered because it was not just another royal address. It was tied to Diana, to childhood, and to the emotional history that made Harry's removal feel personal, even to people who had never met him. The gates became a dividing line between sympathy and discipline. Charles received the public reaction in a final briefing, and the king understood that silence was no longer control. He prepared an internal ruling that would define what the removal meant forever. Meghan feared the ruling would harden the boundary. William feared it would expose the cost of duty. Harry waited for the words that would decide whether he had been reduced to absence or preserved in truth. The world had reacted to the empty line, but the final meaning of that line still depended on what the king chose to say next. In the end, the monarchy did not collapse because one name disappeared from one record. But something did end. The illusion that blood alone could survive every wound. The belief that silence could protect a family from pain. Harry's removal became more than punishment, more than protocol, more than palace control. It became the clearest verdict yet on what the crown demands from those born beneath it. Charles issued the final internal clarification with the same restraint that had shaped the whole crisis. Harry's name would remain removed from the active Kensington royal record, but it would be preserved in the private family archive. The active record meant the working palace file used for present-day recognition, access, and ceremonial placement. The private family archive meant the protected historical record that keeps family identity, bloodline, and personal connection, even when official duties change. That difference mattered because the palace was drawing a hard line between role and blood. Harry read the final note slowly, and this time he did not rage. His anger had already burned through the corridors, through the phone calls, through the silence between brothers and the confession from a father. He placed the note down with a stillness that felt heavier than fury. The palace had not restored his formal place. It had not opened every door again, but it had admitted one truth it could no longer bury. Harry could be removed from a working file, but he could not be erased from the family story. William sat alone after the ruling, knowing duty had survived at a cost he could not celebrate. The prince understood why the monarchy needed order, but he also understood what that order had taken from him. Brotherhood had not been destroyed in a single argument. It had been worn down by silence, protocol, and years of choosing the crown's safety over painful honesty. William had helped protect the structure, yet the future king knew the structure had left a scar no ceremony could hide. Charles kept a copy of the private addendum in his own file. He did not announce that choice. He did not turn it into a speech. The king simply kept the sentence close, as if the father inside him needed proof that he had not surrendered everything to the crown. The addendum stated that Harry remained Diana's son, Charles's son, and William's brother, no matter what the active record declared. The verdict was clear. Harry lost his formal place in the active royal record, but the attempt to reduce him to a removed name failed. His identity survived because history is not only written by institutions. It is carried by memory, grief, blood, and the people who refuse to forget. This was the moment Kensington drew its line, and the moment everyone inside the monarchy learned that removing a name from paper can never remove a person from the story. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.